Welcome to the Council Chamber here in East Gippsland at Main Street, Bairnsdale. So we're about to start the meeting, if you don't mind, please. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're starting our council meeting tonight on Tuesday, the 28th of June 2022. Welcome to our council meeting, and thank you to members of the public who are in the gallery this evening. And just to note that we value participatory democracy, but we also have that heightened responsibility to behave and respect the nature of the chamber, please, while you're here. So thank you for being here. So East Gippsland Shire live streams, records and publishes its meetings via webcasting. These recordings are available for viewing by the public. During the meeting, any member of the public who addresses the council will have their image and comments recorded. No other person has the right to record council meetings unless approval has been granted by the chair, and that's me this evening. Please ensure that your mobile phones and electronic devices are turned off or in silent mode during the meeting. In line with the Local Government Act 2020, councillors are able to attend the council meeting electronically or in person, and the meeting will be open to the public via live streaming. Members of the public are invited to view the live stream council meeting by following the link on the council's website or the Facebook page. If council encounters technical difficulties with the live streaming during the meeting, we will adjourn until the issue is resolved, and if technical issues can't be resolved, the meeting may be postponed to a later time or date. So tonight we acknowledge the Gunai, Kurnai, Monero and Bidawal people as the traditional custodians of the land that encompass East Gippsland Shire and note their enduring relationship with country. The traditional custodians have cared and nurtured East Gippsland for tens of thousands of years. Council value their living culture and practices and their right to self-determination. Council pays respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people living in East Gippsland, their elders past, present and emerging. Now, a member's attendance here can only be recorded as present at this meeting when the member can confirm they meet all of the following criteria: that they can hear the proceedings, they can see other members in attendance and can be seen by other members, and they can be heard to speak. So we have Councillor Van Diegel and Councillor Buckley with us remotely, and I'll confirm with each of them in turn that they can see, hear and be heard by each other, and to note assurance from each that the location they are participating from is secure to ensure confidential deliberations remain confidential. Councillor Van Diegel, can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can, Mayor.
Thank you. Can you confirm that the location you are participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, I can, Mayor.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Buckley, can you see and hear us?
Good evening, Mayor. Yes, I can.
Can you confirm that the location you are participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Indeed it is.
Great, thank you. CEO, we're on to apologies. Are there any apologies?
None have been received.
None have been received, thank you. Are there direct declarations of conflict of interest, councillors or officers? None noted, thank you.
Mayor, I should say, Councillor Mendy Uri
Yes.
was hoping to be able to dial in, and hence, given that she hasn't, we'll take that as an apology.
As an apology, I think she's in remote outback at the moment, thank you. Councillors, I just need to have confirmation of the minutes held on Tuesday the 7th of June, please. Do I have a motion? Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Greeson. You wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Stowe. Councillor Greeson. Is the motion opposed, councillors? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? The motion's carried. Thank you. The minutes are carried. The next meeting, councillors, is on Tuesday, 26 July 2022, held here at the Corporate Centre. 1.6. Are there any requests for leave of absence?
None have been received, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, I'd like a motion to alter the proceedings in the agenda, please. Councillor Stowe.
I'd be happy to move that, Mayor, that the item listed at 4 on the agenda to be considered after the item listed as 5.3.1.
Yeah, thank you. And is there a seconder for that, please? Councillor Crook. Councillor Stowe, did you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Crook. No. Is the motion opposed? for the benefit of the gallery, we're moving the councillors and delegates' reports further down the agenda so that there's an even flow, and the issues that you're probably here to listen to can be dealt with more quickly. So that's why we're doing that. It's a procedural matter. So I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. So we're moving the agenda. The next item is open forum, and I would like to note our Rotary young leader, Paige Coverdale from Bairnsdale West Primary School is here with us tonight. Well done, Paige. You're here with a very impressive gallery, so they've all come to see you. Well done, Paige. Let's give Paige a round of applause. Thank you, CEO. Are there any petitions? None that I have noted.
Thank you, Mayor. There was a petition received from Raymond Island Community Association, but under our governance laws, that's treated as a submission to the budget.
Right.
So that's been included, and it has been circulated to all councillors. And we have written to Raymond Island Community Association advising them of such.
Great, thank you. Item 1.7.2 is questions of council, and I believe there are a couple of questions this evening.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor, we have 3 questions. The first question is from Mr. Walter Idchak, and I believe they're present tonight.
Evening, Walter. We'll just get you in position and turn the microphone on.
Hello.
Greetings, good evening.
It's been a long trip to get here this evening.
Thank you.
But anyway, I'm here. So, just go.
There you have the floor, Walter.
Well, just I got notified 3 days before the election that there's a proposal to change the ferry fees for the Raymond Island. I wrote in a little note sort of saying, sorry, I applaud you for taking the ferry fee away from a car, making a carte blanche, whoever wants can use it, or use the house can have a car. However, I disagree with the fact that the second fee for the ferry, we've owned the house down there for over 40 years, we've gone there the whole time. Vic Roads, when they owned it, gratis. When council took it over, you know, the history, it was gratis. Then a fee came in, we complained about it. The ferry pass was issued, 2 cars, mum and dad. In our particular case, because the property is tenants in common, there's 2 families that utilised the house and they had a ferry pass each. 25 years ago, I bought out my sister-in-law and we had 2 ferries to utilise to go to the property. Very rarely did we go there in 1 car. There was always 2 cars. I had my own business, my wife had her own business. We had a couple of vehicles we could take up here. We had to juggle to get the right vehicle to come up. And then when I saw this, I said, oh, beauty. Eventually something's been heard. Maybe not. Anyway, we'll see. Anyway, so that was the bitch I had, that as tenants in common, we're entitled, I believe, to 2 free ferry passes. I can sell my share of the property, my wife can sell her share of the property, and what's the new owner going to do? Argue as to who's going to pay the additional fee? Don't think so. He should have his own like I should. That was point 1. Point 2, yesterday I was just thumbing through the Raymond Island Ferry Charter, and I noticed that it said there, the Charter says, residents of Raymond Island should not incur a fee to access their homes. Well, that's okay until the proposal to pay for the second ferry. Like I said, we've got 2 cars, we've used 2 cars extensively over the last 40 years. Now in retirement, that's the next issue, in retirement, we still come up here independently and we're not relying on each other, we're swapping cars around. Initially, when we had the properties in 2 different families, one family lived in Wangaratta, the other one lived on the Mornington Peninsula. We couldn't swap tickets, we couldn't even swap them now if we were to accept the one free and the one pay. Two frees, I'm sorry. That was one. And then my other thing was
I think that's the two questions.
last Friday, before I...
So, Walter, you asked two questions? There were the two questions you wanted to ask?
The third one is...
No, two questions. Two questions. We've got a lot of people who want to talk tonight, and so...
Just quickly. Pensioners. I'm a pensioner.
Yep.
However, because I've got a property on the island, I can't get a pension because of, assets. I've got too much, so they say. However, if I sell the property, I'll be right. Can't do. So I disagree with a free pension to a free second pass to the pensioners. It should be to everybody that's got two cars and a property on the island.
Thanks, Walter.
Thank you for
Your
listening.
point's made.
So, Mayor, we're in the question section of the agenda.
Yep.
So there were two questions posed, although there was only one question submitted. And Ms Tapile is going to speak to the first question.
Yep, thanks.
So, thank you, CEO, and through you, Mayor. In response to the first question, the reasoning for the charge to the second and subsequent ferry passes has been well documented in the explanatory documentation and addendums that were provided around the draft budget.
Mm-hmm.
This charge relates to the cost of operating the ferry, which is over $1 million per annum and almost $2.5 million every second year when the ferry is slipped for major maintenance, which is a requirement of the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. In relation to the tenants in common, where properties are owned by tenants in common, there is an opportunity for residents to share a pass, as the pass will be portable and not linked to a single car registration. If one of the tenants is eligible for a pension card, there is the opportunity to receive a second free pass.
Okay, thank you. So thanks for that, Morgana. Now there's a second question to be asked.
There is from Mr William Monfries.
G'day, William. G'day, William. Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you.
For having me. Not surprisingly, my question's about the ferry. It'll be pretty short.
It's all right. Just just stand by. We're checking the speakers.
Thank you.
Yep. Just do a
As loudly as this, can you hear me? Are you
so.
happy?
Well, the gallery needs to hear everything that goes on here. Can you hear me in the back of the gallery now? Yeah, rightio. Good, thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, just right into the microphone there.
Can you hear me now?
Test 1, 2. It can burst into song, William. Try now.
Some enchanted evening.
You did ask. You did ask.
Well, William, there's another song in that that goes, I'm going to wash that man right out of my hair. So...
Well, I saw you first. Thank you for your indulgence. My question will be brief, I hope. And it does refer to the ferry. Mm-hmm. After extensive consultation, Council adopted a services charter for the Raymond Island Ferry in 2020. As you know, the charter states in part that residents, and I underline residents, of Raymond Island should not incur a fee for access to their homes. Currently, only owners of developed land get a council ferry pass. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about whether it's 1, 2, 3. I'm just saying your own specification is owners. My questions are, when will council follow their own ferry services charter and ensure that owners and residents get a council ferry pass? And will council pass an amendment to the budget to bring this into effect tonight? Thank you.
Thanks, William. Morgana.
Thank you, Mayor. In response to the question, the Service Charter in its purpose indicates that it is a guiding but not a legally binding document and instrument. The Charter was based on the reports adopted by Council in May 2020 and it's reasonable that it should be reviewed from time to time, especially when there has been a change of council.
Yep, thank you. Okay. So thank you. We're on to public submissions then, and there are 3 public submissions, 3 in relation to the budget and 1 on libraries.
Just before you-
CEO, yep.
Sorry, Mayor, to interrupt. There was a third question that came in late from
Right.
Casey Booth, so apologies for that.
Okay. Is
So-
Casey here?
Here?
G'day, Casey. Welcome. And Casey, that microphone, you just need to...
Can I break in song too?
You can break into song. That's a good way to go.
No, first of all, I'd like to say good evening. Thank you so much for allowing me to come up last minute. Councillor, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, CEO, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
My question this evening is obviously regarding the libraries, particularly the Paynesville Library. Significant hours look like they've been proposed, decreasing 18 and a half hours. This library is the only community asset in Paynesville. It's also the Visitor Information Centre, and surprisingly, an information centre for me would be a place where you could go on a weekend when you've got a lot of tourists. Paynesville has abundance of tourists over periods like that now, over the school holidays. But nothing's open on a Saturday to allow the people to know what's going on around Paynesville and the Gippsland lakes. It would be more beneficial to perhaps, I don't know, obviously it's got to do with budget, cutting costs and things like that, why you're decreasing the hours in the libraries. But for Paynesville, would it be possible at looking at the federal government funding and oppose maybe an application in a tourism approach? Because at the moment they're granting up to 10 million, little as 150,000, to create a real visitor information centre, to have it on the Saturday mornings, to perhaps see if the museum down the road could be adjoined to the library. If you go to places like Warburton or Corryong, they have the most incredible visitor information centres, and they have incredible staff that can support the tourism part of the town. Yeah, okay, maybe shave a couple of hours, half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the afternoon to allow the Saturday. Then you'd get some numbers. You'd get some real visitor numbers to see how many people go and visit a town like Paynesville. So then maybe you can invest in building and developing this town. It's got so much potential. There's developers that have invested, you know, your 5-storey units that are coming up in the next, you know, couple of years. There's businesses that are starting to really spite up. How about we work together? Instead of taking away a community asset like the library or decreasing its hours, let's invest in bringing more people into the town on a tourism basis, because that's what the federal government seems to be supporting as well. Just a thought.
So good. Well, thank you for we always we're always interested in elegant and simple solutions to complex problems. So thank you for that. CEO, do we have someone?
We do,
Mr. Cannizzaro, Peter. Federal government funding and alternative opening hours. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank
ideas.
you. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
We would like to take that question on notice. We most likely will need to look at federal and state, but we'll take that on notice.
Yeah, thank you. As we know, we're in the review process and we're taking feedback, so anything that around those issues are really welcome. So thanks for your contribution.
Is it important to just mention, Mayor, that decision is not being made tonight?
Absolutely. So we're not making a decision on libraries tonight. But thank you all for being here. So we're on to item 1.7, which is public submissions. And as I mentioned, there are 3 on the budget and 1 on the library review.
We'll start, Mayor, with Cosette Murphy, who wishes to speak about the Service Centre and Library Review.
Yep, great.
Hello, me again.
Hello, Cosette. Just check the microphone's on.
Hello.
You should be familiar with the place.
Yes, I'm going to make it my second house. Okie dokie. Can you hear me at the back?
Yep, that's a yes. Thank you.
Okay. Dear Mayor, councillors, CEO, members of the public, And on behalf of the Friends of the Library, I would like to thank the Deputy Mayor, Arthur Allen, Councillor Jane Grayson, Councillor Kirsten Van Digel, for attending yesterday's meeting with the members of our community regarding the libraries. The community was informed that the reason for the service centre and library reviews was that it had been a long time since the review was going to be carried out. The criteria for the review was on the foot traffic from March 2020 to March 21, similarities to Mildura Council, land, area and population, and the increase in demands for the call centres. We, the community, don't believe these are strong evidence to base the service centre and library reviews proposed by the Manager Customer Experience, Libraries and Communication, Nola Brady. We like this review to be void. Looking at the Council vision, it states that we are an inclusive and innovative community, that we value our natural environment, that we put our community at the center of council decisions, making and creates the condition in which communities can thrive. But where are the involvement of the council's community engagement officers? 3 community sessions carried out and 2 invitations from Friends of the Library to talk with the councillors. It is not enough to put community at the center of council's decision-making so that we can thrive. If council was fully interested in our community to thrive, it will be doing the complete opposite to what it's proposing. We had the fires, COVID-19, the lockdowns, and the mandates that ripped apart our community. Our community needs to reconnect face-to-face as humans are born to do. Libraries are the perfect location to enhance and increase opportunities for community to make up for the lost time, rebuild what it was been broken, and to truly put communities at the center of what you are proposing. Perhaps relocate the funds from cost saving made when the libraries and the other community facilities were closed during the lockdowns, could be used for funding increased services, or maybe sell your company cars, or don't do special lunches. This whole proposal shows that the council organization has lost touch with the community it needs and the respect it deserves. Our libraries are our hearts. Let them alone. Thank you.
Thanks, Cosset. Now there's three submissions on the budget. So who do we have, CEO?
Mayor, the first person to speak is Mr Ian Campbell to
Ian.
item 5.1.1.
Good evening, Ian. Come and join that microphone, and if you can speak nice and clearly into it so that your gallery can hear you.
I'll just take this off while
Yep.
I speak.
Please do.
Can everyone hear me at the back? Okay. Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ian Campbell. I represent the Raymond Island Community Association in the matter of the Raymond Island Ferry. First of all, congratulations on dropping the pedestrian ferry fee from the latest version of the budget. It was never going to work, not thought through, no consultation. The budget as it relates to Raymond Island Ferry is based on a false premise. It ignores the Raymond Island Ferry Charter, unanimously approved by this council only 2 years ago. It accepts that the Raymond Island Ferry is a core service, that ratepayers of East Gippsland should equitably pay the cost of that service. It's not just the residents of Raymond Island who use it. Many tourists, many locals also use it. And the residents of Raymond Island should not incur a fee for access to their own homes. Accordingly, Council's own website states that owners of developed land on Raymond Island are entitled to 2 free ferry passes each year. Now, this has been the case since 2004. And councillors, I'm assuming that you received an email from Raymond Island Community Association on Friday, and that you also received hard copy of our submission and proposed speech before we found out that some of that budget had been changed. Now, in that, there was a copy of the letter from the Victorian Grants Commission, which awarded to council roads funding as if the ferry was a bridge. Now, that has been since 2004 to the current day. In 2004, it was $80,000. Currently, it's about $140,000. Now, if you look at that, you look at those figures, you look at the population of the island, the number of households, that roughly translates into 2 free passes for every household. The government is paying... Should we eventually lose all of that, then logically they would be able to say, well, why are we giving you this money? Back to the text. The revised budget is now offering a free second portable pass to holders of the Victorian Pension Concession Card, as it states in your announcement, or at least in your budget. The Mayor was good enough to explain to me that that's not actually what it is. It's passes that the Victorian government recognise as pension concessions. So there's a whole lot of other things in there, including Veterans Affairs, which I was very concerned about, them being left out. Having said that, there are a lot of people who are still on low incomes, who are working families, often working very low paid jobs, and they don't have a spare $300. So that needs to be considered. Also, there are a lot of people who need their 2 cars so that one can go volunteering, contributing to our community, also for their mental health, for their medical requirements, childcare, and not everyone involved in childcare is a young adult. Some of them, many of them, are my age, picking up grandchildren. When we deal with our Shire, we want to know that we can believe what we're told. Communication has not been great so far. We want to receive clear and unambiguous communication, and that the agreements, or charters in this case, will be honoured. In our opinion, the current budget process with respect to the island and island access has failed on those 3 tests. With respect, councillors, your responsibility in this process is quality control, to protect the ratepayers from proceedings that, in a manner, will break council's ferry charter for with the people of Raymond Island, raise little money in the resulting new discriminatory fee, and impact negatively not only on Raymond Island but on Paynesville CBD businesses and the available parking. I don't know how many people I've talked to who've said, I won't be paying that fee, I'll park on the other side. Just imagine that. It'd be like the ferry's out all year round. Please don't sign your name to this and your reputation to this budget as it relates to the new second ferry fee pass fee. Where else in regional Victoria are people charged for access to their own homes? Now, there was mention earlier tonight that...
Rightio. Okay, Ian, we're out of time, I'm afraid, so thanks very much for your contribution.
Very quickly, that petition you received 400...
Sorry, Ian, the gallery, if you don't listen quietly, then we will suspend standing orders, so everybody has a right to be heard. And at the moment, it's Ian. So listen to your member. Ian, just finish off if you would, please.
So just finishing off, we now ask the council to move, second and pass a motion to amend the budget on page 90 under fees and charges and other relevant pages to say ferry pass, owners of developed land, car, motorcycles, first vehicle free, ferry pass, owners of developed land, cars, motorcycles, second vehicle free.
Thanks, Ian. CEO. Who have we got next?
Thank you, Mayor. Catherine Holbrook.
Catherine.
Also speaking to item 5.1.1.
Good on you. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My name's Catherine Holbrook.
Hello.
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I've lived on Raymond Island for 14 years. Why are we here again? Why do you still want some residents of Raymond Island to pay for the right to drive to and from their home? No one else in East Gippsland has to. Why do we have to keep fighting this battle? In 2004, you made us fight for car passes. In 2014, we had to do it again. In May 2020, you endorsed the Ferry Service Charter. You agreed that residents of Raymond Island should not incur a fee to access their homes. Have you forgotten these decisions? Why are you ignoring your own business rule about the ferry? You gave us certainty, now you've taken it away. Should we be happy with anxiety and financial stress instead? The ferry is part of the road network. It links Raymond Island and Painesville, and it's your problem. Why are you trying to make it our problem? You wouldn't put a toll on a bridge. How can you sit in your offices and dream this stuff up? Do you care so little about our community? Drop this idea now and start treating us like the rest of the Shire. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate it. And the third speaker on the budget there, CEO?
Mr. William Monfries again.
William.
Thank you for having me back again.
Greetings.
Greetings again. Same evening. Look, this is a private speech. Some islanders may not in fact agree with everything I'm about to say. Most probably will. When I say we, that's who I think will agree with me. If you hear people grumbling, they're the ones who don't. You can tell this is a serious issue. And we know that you think we're pests, and that's the way it goes. All I want out of tonight is for people who live on Raymond Island to be able to drive to and from home without let or hindrance. That's a pretty universal right of access. To me, that means one council ferry pass per eligible person. Not hard to get your head around. Individuals don't actually need a second ferry pass. And this is where you might hear a few people grumbling behind me. Rateable properties don't need more free passes than people who live there, do they? Rateable property has one person in it, one pass. Most of us don't want any other benefits or advantages beyond our right to come and go without let or hindrance. We too want the ferry to earn income. We too want the ferry to have a sustainable and affordable future. We too love the ferry and we love what it brings to this region. It's part of us as well. Issues. I do acknowledge a number of issues. The ferry costs money. It doesn't cost $2.4 million every slipping year. Your own budget figures are wildly inaccurate and some of them disagree with each other, and I'm happy to take that up with you afterwards. With the cessation of the ferry contract, I understand that it's going to take time to get a grip on costs, maintenance, repairs, slipping, and get an accurate picture. I get that. I get that you find the ferry problematic. It's a difficult management matter. And I also get that you think some islanders want a special deal. I know we're seen as a bit different, and some of you probably even see us as pests. I understand that, but everybody who lives there is entitled to equity of access. Importantly, because of the way passes are issued, some residents miss out and council loses income. Currently, homes with one resident ratepayer can get 2 passes. These second passes are often used, they'll really wind up some of them, to avoid paying ferry fees. Think visiting family and friends, tourists staying in B&Bs and so on. Other homes with no ratepayers, rentals and so on, get no passes, unless I've got a generous landlord who actually passes the pass on. Your policy says that people can get a pass, but in practice you write to ratepayers and ask them to submit up to 2-car rate of affairs, and it usually is when policy and practice don't align. The bottom line is that you issue some passes that end up with people who should be paying for them, and you don't issue passes to some people who live on the island but don't pay rates. Briefly, our rates at work, we all pay over East Gippsland for things that we don't use, whether it's the Malakuta boat ramp, the Omeo bike park or anything else. We all also pay for the Raymond Island ferry. The solution is to follow your own business rules. It's easy, glib and unfair on the night to ask someone to say guiding principles are just guiding principles, and we decide that we don't want to follow them whenever someone brings one of them up. It's an easy rejoinder, but it's unfair on the person who has to make it, in my opinion. The solution lies in you following your charter and those rules. How would it work? It's really simple. Amend your ferry fee rules on page 90 to say owners and residents, 1 pass. Any other pass, pay. Owners and residents, 1 pass. Thank you for indulging me.
Thanks, Ian. William, I should say. Thank you, councillors. That concludes the public submissions. So we'll move on to item 2. And item 2, councillors, is notices of motion, and there is a notice of motion there. Councillor White, you have a notice of motion you'd like to present.
I was trying to attract your attention, the ferry charges first. Is it possible to ask a question about what's transpired here tonight?
I don't think so, Councillor White. That would come in under the next item, or the item around the adoption of the council budget, I would have thought.
Okay.
Yep. So if you can park the question for that item.
Yep.
Yep.
I can do that.
So did you want to move on to, you have on the table a notice of motion there, Councillor White.
Thank you.
Do you want to move that?
Oh, well, can I just move it then?
Yep. So you can just, I guess for the record, you can read what it says that you wish to do.
Yeah, well, I wish to move a motion that councillors support a new option for rate differentials for the 2022-23 budget year as set out below.
Thanks, Councillor White. Is the motion seconded? Councillor Buckley, thank you. Councillor White, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. In the printed up document here, there are a number of pages which are taken directly from the budget, so I certainly will not read right through all that. So I will just
thank you.
directly to the rationale.
Yep, that's good.
Now, let me see. I've got to get through all Liz's stuff here first.
Got it there, John. Page 12 on our document.
Nearly there.
That's all right.
Oh, surely I haven't gone past it. You got a half. Thank you.
Got a hard copy. Excellent. That's easy to find.
Sorry for sacrificing
No, that's all right.
a
You're
tree.
right. We've got time.
But it had to be done. So, councillors, I'll read out this rationale, and I do hope that you consider this, because we've actually been working very hard this year on our rating strategies. So this option, and unfortunately it came very, very late, in fact only last week, this option clearly gives all 3 categories the fairest form of contribution for rate revenue. This will mitigate larger rate increases for the farming sector because of massive increases in valuation, while still delivering a healthy reduction to the commercial and industrial sector. This option also has the smallest financial impact on the residential ratepayers, being only $10 per year, which is, I find that to be fairly acceptable. Now, our own Shire policy regarding natural disasters states recovery to be in the order of 3 to 5 years. And thinking back to the drought and bushfires, the bushfires was a mere 2 years and 6 months ago, and the breaking of the drought 2 years and 2 months ago. So I urge the councillor group to think long and hard regarding the decision they are about to make in the budget, which will have a significant impact on the rural sector of our Shire, and the flow-on effects will be felt by other sectors of our business community. Our own draft 4-year revenue and rating plan on page 12 of the document is mindful of the impacts of rises and falls in property valuations, that the council rates remain affordable, meaning that rating shocks are mitigated to some degree. This option will result in a reduction of 13% for commercial and industrial, which increases their annual rates bill on average by only $19. So they are getting a reduction, but it would be less $19. They were always, because of the valuations, they were always in for a rate reduction, which was something that some councillors were keen to see, but it had already happened through the Valuer General. A 4.02% increase for residential, which equates to an additional $10 per year on average for their rate bill over the original draft budget for 2022-23, and an increase of 2.87% for the farm sector, resulting in a $121 reduction to their bill over the original draft budget. This is, I believe, a good outcome. It is having the effects of smoothing the rate changes, and when we actually started in our discussions, we'd started at a rate increase for farmers of 28%, which was going to be horrendous. And so I'm pleased that you've listened, and I'll just put it to you. You may have somebody who wishes to speak.
Thanks, Councillor Watt. Councillor Buckley, you seconded the motion. Do you want to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would like to speak to the motion. Firstly, I wish to apologise to the community that I'm not present in the council chambers tonight, and it's for reasons that I'm not privileged to explain. However, I wish that I could be with you for what is an important decision-making process, the budget. And I represent a lot of farmers that I've spoken to tonight. I don't support the proposed hike in farmers' rates, as it just doesn't pass the community fairness test. Although the commodity prices for cattle is at a record high, so are production costs. And we as councillors should never make decisions based on people's incomes. We must note that not all rural properties raise cattle and are not benefiting from a surge in commodity prices. High cattle prices are not a good enough reason to hike rates and create a rate burden for farmers across the agricultural and horticultural sector. For the record, the Rabobank quarterly updates have predicted beef returns to drop by 25 to 30% by December. I note that rate rises for the farming sector since 2015 have increased by 32.68%. And last year's increase to rates for farmers were buffered by the allocation of a one-time rate rebate of $600,000. This buffer will not be applied this time and will result in a rate shock. Small landholders, because of overstated capital improvement in valuations, which are set by the state, will be most affected. I understand the impact of the state government imposed lockdowns re the COVID issue affected some retail businesses and smaller commercial enterprises. However, farmers were not eligible for any of the state and federal assistance during COVID-19, unlike the commercial sector. In fact, some aspects of our commercial industry have boomed, such as construction, civil works, major retail outlets and transport, which of course is great to see. It is in our council policy to allow time for recovery of farmers after the suffering through a prolonged drought, then the incredible and frightful fire events of 2020, where 53% of our land was burnt, farmers had to destock, and many are still nowhere near being close to carrying capacity. Councillors, we must acknowledge we are only halfway through the recovery phase. To hike the rates of farmers at this junction because of a misplaced assumption of cattle commodity prices would not only show a lack of empathy and understanding, but it would also create a negative economic impact that we cannot afford. The English have it right. In England, because they understand the importance of food production, they only rate the house and curtilage and leave the broad acres alone so that farmers can produce the food and fibre we all need. I would like the East Gippsland Shire to adopt this principle. The agricultural in closing, the agricultural industry is a critical sector. It is clearly defined in the Council's current draft economic development strategy to be a priority to support this high value and sustainable food and fibre sector, which is the bedrock of East Gippsland Shire's economy.
Good on you, Councillor Buckley. Thank you.
I have 5 minutes.
So that's time.
I've only had, I haven't had time yet.
That's
I'm
time.
afraid.
That's 3 minutes. So thank you, Councillor Buckley.
No, sorry. Can I just have confirmation from the CEO? Do I get 3 or 5 minutes?
3
to
minutes.
Speak?
3 minutes.
CEO?
Through you, Mayor, as per our governance rules, it's 3 minutes for any other speaker other than the person that moves the motion.
So you can always defer to the chair, and I have the standing orders here. Thank you, Councillor Buckley.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, councillors, is the motion opposed?
I wonder if I can call for the motion to be put.
So there's a procedural motion in front of us, councillors, that the motion be put. Is there a seconder? Have a seconder. In that case, councillors, I move that the motion be put then. All those in favour of the alternative of the motion being put? This is all those in favour of the motion being put. Okay, so we will put the motion now. It's carried. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 councillors have moved the motion be put. In which case, councillors? Okay, yeah, sorry, Councillor White. So there was a procedural motion that the motion be put. So now we're going to put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of the notice of motion as it stands? All those against? 1, 2, so the motion is lost. Thank you, councillors. We are moving on past deferred business. There is no deferred business, so we're moving on to officers' report, which is item 5. And item 5 is business excellence, and 5.1.1, the adoption of the council budget 2022. Councillors, you will find that on page 13 of the documents today. So, Mr Cannizzaro, we'll defer to you.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Councillors, before you tonight is a report titled Adoption of Council Budget 2022/23. Key points of the report for councillors to consider tonight are the budget has been prepared in accordance with the Local Government Act 2020 and the Local Government Planning and Reporting Regulations of 2020. The budget proposes a rates and municipal charge total income increase of 1.75%, in line with the rate cap set by the Victorian Government for the 22-23 financial year. The draft budget proposes an operating surplus of $40.08 million. However, when adjusted for non-recurrent capital grants and monetary and non-monetary contributions, the adjusted result is a deficit of $11.915 million. This can be mainly attributed in the main to the receipt of an advance payment of $13.8 million of the 22-23 Victoria Grants Commission payment being received in this financial year, 21-22. You'll also note, councillors, there's a capital works program of approximately $104 million being proposed, with $50.3 million of the program being projects carried over from the 21-22 financial year. There's $53.2 million of forecast capital grants that will go towards the capital program in the 22-23 financial year. Councillors, I'd also like to make a point of clarification with regards to the Raymond Island Ferry Pass, as shown in the proposed fees and charges for 22-23, and I specifically refer you, councillors, to rows 3 and 4 on the table on page 113 of page 754 on the agenda. The clarification is that if an owner of developed land on Raymond Island is eligible for a municipal rates concession, the second ferry pass will be free of charge. To be eligible for a municipal rates concession, the owner of developed land on Raymond Island will be a holder of one of the following cards: a Centrelink pensioner concession card, or a Veterans Affairs pensioner concession card, a gold card, War Widow, and a gold card TPI, TPI standing for Total and Permanent Incapacity. It's intended to make that point of clarification, councillors, within the description of the fees and charges 22-23 document as an administrative change post tonight's meeting, should the recommendations before you are adopted. Tonight, councillors, with me is Liz Collins, Manager of Finance, who is available to answer any of the technical questions on tonight's report, and I present that to you, councillors, tonight, along with the recommendations.
Great. Thank you, Peter Cannizzaro. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Greason and then Councillor White.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a question to Liz. With respect to the Raymond Island Ferry, at the moment we're talking about landowners only, not residents, is that correct? To get the free pass?
Owners of developed land.
Developed land.
Land on Raymond
so
Island.
People who are renting accommodation there, living there as residents, are not eligible?
My understanding is no, if they're not an owner, then they're not eligible for the free pass.
Okay, so is
yeah, thank you. Just excuse me. We won't be yelling from the gallery. Thank you. No, you won't. We treat everybody with respect and dignity here, and people have had a chance to speak. Councillor Greason, continue your question, please.
Is it feasible to consider the same free pass for residents on Raymond Island as well as landowners?
Well, Councillor Greason, that's probably a question for the councillors rather than the officer to make that decision. So
I was thinking more in terms of practicalities and, I mean, I think it is, but okay, so that's my question.
Yep. So yes, anything's possible, Councillor Greason. We can make a decision on anything. Yep. So the question may be, Ms Collins, is around, at the moment, a non-resident doesn't have access to the free passes either.
As the fees are set out, it is just the owners of
The owners.
land.
So
Yeah.
that hasn't changed in the proposal.
Yeah, that Morgana would confirm that.
Is that okay, Councillor Greason? That's the same situation as stands.
So if that's the case, I would like to, I don't know whether I'm going to need assistance here, whether to propose an amendment.
Just park that for the moment until we finish the questions, because once, if the recommendation becomes a motion, then you can propose an amendment. Yep, so we'll guide you through that. No worries. Are there any other questions, councillors? Councillor White. It's all right, Councillor White, I'm looking around and you can just let me know.
Yeah, I do have a question. I've not been a supporter of the changes to the ferry passes, but of course it's majority rules. Now, my question is, after we've been presented by, you know, the people that have spoken here tonight, and I applaud them for having the courage to come forward. The question is it, if the budget's passed and that is in it, is it at a later time in the year that could be reversed if the council has agreed to it, or does it have to be done tonight in a motion?
So I think technically, Councillor White, a councillor can bring an alteration to a councillor decision any time. So that can be made any time. So it doesn't even have to be a rescission motion in the next 48 hours. We can bring an amendment to a council resolution at any time.
Okay, so because it's not quite the right forum here to actually get down into discussion again as a group, but I would like the opportunity after the recess to work through this and hopefully to get a change of feeling about the decision that's in the budget at the moment. So in other words, it doesn't have to be done tonight. We can revisit.
Yeah, quite so. So
that would be a better option.
So if the recommendation is passed tonight, then it can always be amended at a later date. Quite so, Councillor White. Yep. Good with that, our governance team? Yep, great. Thanks, John. Are there any other questions, councillors? Councillors, then there is a recommendation in front of you. Is there a motion? Councillor Allen, is there a seconder? Councillor Greason. Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, I commend the 2022-23 draft budget for your consideration and adoption. In simple terms, the budget anticipates a rise in the total rate revenue of 1.75%, in line with the rate cap set by the Minister for Local Government. In stating this, it is important to recognise that because of changes in valuations, individual ratepayers may experience increases well above the 1.75%, while others may experience significant decreases. It is also important to note that these valuations are carried out by the Valuer General, not the Shire, and more importantly, to note that individual ratepayers may challenge the valuation should they disagree with them. Following feedback on the draft budget, the following changes have been proposed. The farm differential has been set at 80% from the proposed 85%. Amendments have been made to the Raymond Island ferry fees to provide a second free annual pass to owners of developed land who hold a pension card, and the removal of the $2 walk-on fee. The differential rate for commercial property has been set at 140%, a decrease of 5%. But please note that that's still 60% above the farm rate. Because of the significant cost imposed on the Shire for landfill levies by the EPA, a waste levy of $37 will apply to each rate assessment in line with the municipal charge. Curbside collection and the majority of waste charges remain unchanged. In recognition of the drought, fire and COVID impacts, the Shire has provided additional financial assistance from 2019-20 years through till the present. This continues in the 22-23 year with the continuation of weight waivers for ratepayers whose main dwelling was destroyed in the fire, and will continue until a new dwelling is occupied or the property is sold. It is proposed to continue bushfire recovery support and assistance to communities in the recovery process, and the continuation of the rate rebate for eligible pensioners of $60.36. The draft budget proposes significant capital works of $104.91 million, which is a massive program. I won't list the projects one by one, but suffice to say, we are in the fortunate position of having this level of investment in our Shire. and I believe we need to congratulate our Shire staff who have been able to attract record grant funding for these projects. Councillors, I believe the proposed 22-23 budget is responsible, equitable and sustainable, and in the long-term interest of East Gippsland and its communities. I encourage you to support the adoption of the budget. Thank you.
Councillor Allen, thank you. Councillor Greason, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I'll just add a little bit to what Councillor Allen has said. I just wanted to say that, look, as a council, we've discussed these rates a number of times and looked at a range of options, and our aim is to be as fair as possible. We've heard quite a lot of submissions. We've read a lot of emails, you know, people putting in submissions by email, etc. I've accepted that for farmers, times are still tough, which is why I support continuation of the farming sector's existing subsidy at 80% of the differential rate. I also believe that apart from big franchises like Bunnings and industries like Dalson's, many small to medium-sized businesses are struggling as a result of COVID lockdowns and changes in the economy with increasing costs to be managed like fuel and energy, costs of contractors, etc. There are many empty shops in our towns and I wish to see their rates burdened, alleviated a little. At present they do subsidise other sectors. So I'm supporting their differential rate reduced from 145 to 140%. It's a small move in what I consider to be the right direction. It means a reduction in the Economic Development Fund that we have, but it is an important step. At the same time, I'm interested in minimising increased residential rates. We can't do anything about the Valuer General's decisions with respect to capital improved value, and we know that this will impact on people's rates. It will impact on all sectors. As a council, we of course face substantial cost increases in our costs for all of our work and construction and operations, maintenance of assets, road, infrastructure, etc., which will be in fact greater than the rate cap of 1.75%, which is what we will be applying. Our Shire covers 10% of the state and has a relatively small rateable base, 80% of the Shire being unrateable public land. So we know that this 1.75% rate increase within the rate differential plus the Valuer General's capital improved value estimates will lead to a 3.33% increase for residential properties, a 13.71% decrease for commercial and industrial properties, and an 8.48% increase for farming properties. So we're going to be looking closely at our services and overall running costs and aiming for efficiencies throughout. In East Gippsland Shire Council, we've only got 3 categories that we consider rate differentials for. We have the opportunity to review this, and within each of these categories there are businesses that have sufficient resources to absorb rate increases and others that don't. Pensioners have some support with their rates. Within the farming sector, the Valuer General's assessment is if all of the land owned by each farmer, there may be arguments to differentiate somehow or another in the farming enterprises, land that's productive versus that's not. And I think we need advice from the agriculture.
Councillor Greason, thank you for your contribution. Could you just wind that up?
Okay, so I'm interested in looking at ways to incentivise our farming and our industry in different ways. For example, with farming, maybe to incentivise...
Thanks, Councillor Greason.
...their greenhouse gases.
Yep, that is definitely time. Thank you. Much appreciated. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Councillor White, would you like to speak against the motion?
Thank you. My other issues with this budget is the size of the capital works program, and it's not about that the officers haven't done well in attracting the grants and we've got all these great projects lined up. It is the time it's going to take, and we've already found that projects, when they go out to tender, are in excess of the grant that's been made available. And my worry is that because of the size, how much extra money do we have to find to complete projects, or actually to pay the contractors to do the projects, and where will that money come from? And I suspect the only way will be out of our rates revenue. And that's a real worry because or borrowings to assist to get projects completed. So my concern is that we won't have enough money, even though we've got this great big project amount, that it will not be enough to complete. Like, you know, we may just have to not do some of these projects, give the money back. I'm not sure, but that's my concern, that we don't have enough contractors and that the price of the inputs to get the projects up and running is going to be well above the grant money that's been provided to do them. I've got nothing against the projects, it is just that I think we won't have sufficient grant money to complete them. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak in favour of the motion? Councillors? Councillor Buckley, you wanted to speak against the motion.
Thank you very much, Mayor. The East Gippsland Shire vision puts community at the centre of council decision making and creates the conditions in which communities can thrive. So I'd like to thank every person who submitted their response to the draft budget. There were 890 pages of submissions and many were heartbreaking to read, especially regarding the farmers' response to the rate hike. Councillor White and I met with the community and fought hard for some changes to be made. We had some success, however, losing the motion this evening has been a hard defeat. However, I'm obliged to accept the Council's position, but according to our taxation principle, when developing a rating strategy, consideration must be given for the capacity to pay. And truth is, many farmers have not recovered physically, mentally, nor financially from the tribulations of the last 5 years. I believe the motion that was put forward by Councillor White, which I supported, was the fairest option. We've had a lot of pushback regarding the Raymond Island Ferry Service proposed increase. I haven't supported an increase, nor did I support the second pass. I understand the concerns of the residents, and I believe that the Council should have undertaken more community consultation regarding the matter to come to a better understanding with the community about the costs of running the service, and that Raymond Island community were very clear on the position, and I appreciate every email. I don't believe any changes were needed re the Raymond Island Ferry. I think the last council group had found the right position for the council. I have my concerns re the ability for our council to be able to deliver on the incredibly large capital works program, as it's a huge undertaking and that should be acknowledged. I do acknowledge the efforts of the staff. However, delays in materials and contractors are hindering the operational side of delivery, and I would like Council to have a transparent communication with ratepayers as to why at times we are not meeting our commitments. The increase into the economic development costs by 64% and the achievements of the Economic Development Unit should be made clear. I believe the new Regional Economic Development Strategy will provide vision, have the right aims, focus on the right targets, and deliver the strategies and partnerships we need to ensure the prosperity of the region. How this investment of ratepayers' money benefiting the community needs to be made transparent. I have concerns regarding the operational costs of governance. In this year alone, we were over budget by 67%. That is 2.2 million. I think the ratepayers are entitled to know why this has occurred, where the money was spent, and the community should be informed of the overall costs of consultancy and legal work undertaken. It's important that we have transparency re the budget versus actual expenditure. And finally, it's been suggested by community members that we must have a comparison of budget versus actual performance for the year ahead, which will provide information on the actual performance of the Shire against its previous budget. And this would be useful to attest the capability to deliver future budget estimates.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. That is time, and appreciate.
You're welcome.
Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillors, I'd just like to make a couple of points. I think that we have to and have made a decision based on an assessment of the whole Shire. Every person, every salary person, every farmer, every business owner. And today we heard the very disturbing news of one of our most respected builders who has run into financial troubles. This is one of the risks that we face if we don't look after all sectors of our community. Those sectors don't have the same benefits of Farmgate and other commodity price benefits. They have fixed business costs just like everybody else. We know that inflation is running between 4 and 5% officially, but I think every one of us here is probably realising it's at 7 or 8%, especially if you're running a diesel car. So we have to look after everybody. If we're not mindful of the way we run our budgets and our operations, we'll be in the same situation as our neighbouring Shire, Snowy Valleys in New South Wales, just across the border. This year, they are striking a rate increase of 15.75%. For 2 years. Ours is 1.75. Through good, careful, considered management, we can do that. If we don't, and if we run astray, then you will, residents, be in the situation of the people of Tumbarumba, Batlow, of looking at a 15.75% rate rise on average, and that doesn't account for the property prices that have escalated just like here. So that's a warning. We have to be mindful of that. So I think that the council group have taken the considered approach and a very cautious approach here. I'd also draw to your attention, councillors, that the information at the Australian Local Government Association that I attended last week. Across the whole of Australia, the aggregated total tax we pay in rates amounts to 3.5% or to 4% of our total tax contribution. The worst tax we pay is stamp duty on the properties that you buy. That tax goes straight to the state government and you don't see anything for it, as a general rule. The best tax you pay is Shire rates, because that rate results in 25% of the deliverable outcomes of every tax that you pay right in your backyard. 25%. That's absolutely the case. And that includes all the capital works program, every road, every bridge, every service, every ferry, absolutely, your roads. And as a result, councillors, I also commend this budget to you as a responsible budget, and so put it to you. If there's no one else speaking for or against the motion, then, councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of the motion? 2. Those against? So, yeah, the motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to item 5.1.2, which is the adoption of the 10-year financial plan. That's at page 143. Cannizzaro. We will, so thank you. You are happy to leave, and we're happy to do so, and we will treat the chamber with the respect it deserves. Did you want to go, John? Are you leaving? Yeah.
Through you, Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Cannizzaro.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Council, before you is a report titled The 10-Year Financial Plan 22-23 through to 31-32 financial year, and also a 4-year revenue and rating plan for financial year 22-3 and through to 25-26. The key points of the report for councillors to consider are these are 2 key financial planning documents which are presented tonight seeking council adoption. The Local Government Act 2020 requires council to adopt a 10-year financial plan. As you know, the plan was first adopted for the 2021-22 through to 30-31 financial year period and has now been updated for the ensuing 10 years, 22-3 through to 31-32. The plan has been revised in conjunction with the 22-23 budget to ensure that the resources required to give effect to the council plan and other strategic plans are aligned. The plan provides information about the decisions and assumptions that underpin the forecasts describing the financial resources and has effect from 1 July 2022. The plan is a key planning document and supports council's financial sustainability into the future. The Local Government Act also requires Council to prepare and adopt a 4-year revenue and rating plan. The revenue and rating plan has been reviewed and updated again for the 4 years 22-3 through to 25-26. It also includes information regarding rating legislation and principles, together with other information on Council's current rating differentials, service charges and other forms of revenue. The revenue and rating plan also supports the 10-year financial plan and the 22-23 budget. Also present tonight is Manager Finance, Liz Collins, who'll be able to provide any answers to your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Cannizzaro. Councillors, are there any questions? If there are no questions, then there is a recommendation there, councillors. This is item 5.1.2. There's a recommendation, Councillor Stowe, moving it, seconding it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Greason, thank you. Didn't want to move it from the chair, but I could have. Councillor Stowe, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Council has updated the 10-year financial plan and the 4-year revenue and rating plan in conjunction with the 2022-23 budget to ensure financial resources required to give effect to the council plan are aligned. The financial plan provides a long-term view of the resources that are expected to be available to council and the proposed predicted application and use of those resources. The plan is updated each year to reflect the financial planning for the next 10 years. To note is that while a conservative approach is taken for future rate cap and CPI percentage increases, these are kept consistent and are reviewed and updated annually. The 10-year financial plan includes assumptions that are aligned in the 4 years of budget in the 2022-23 budget. The information, including key financial indicators provided in the 10-year plan, supports Council's financial sustainability into the future. The 4-year revenue and rating plan provides a medium-term plan for how Council will generate income to deliver on the Council plan, program and services and capital works commitments over a 4-year period. It determines the revenue and rating envelope which Council proposes to operate, which is reflected in Council's 10-year plan and the budget of 22-23 and the 4 years of budget information included in that document. The revenue and rating plan is a key planning document which identifies what each source of revenue is, how much income will be raised in each case, and the assumptions for each to provide the proposed expenditure included in the 4-year budget. I would like to encourage our community to read the 10-year financial plan and the 4-year revenue and rating plan in conjunction with the council plan and draft budget of 22-23. When read together, these 4 key strategic documents provide a good understanding of the multitude of works, services and projects the council delivers and what is planned for the future in a financially sustainable way. Councillors, I believe that the 10-year financial plan provides a financially sound and sustainable view of Council's expected financial position over the next 10 years, and the 4-year revenue and rating plan provides important information in regards to Council revenue planning over the next 4 years, and I encourage you to support the adoption of the financial plan and revenue and rating plan.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe, just in the nick of time.
You're a
Councillor Greason, did you?
No, thank you. I can't add to that.
Thank you. Is the motion opposed, councillors? Anybody like to speak for or against the motion? Councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote then. All those in favour? Those against? The motion's carried. Item 5.1.3, councillors, is the council plan, year 2. Councillor Buckley, are you okay?
I just had a question, and I do apologise that I didn't bring this up earlier.
Yep.
Is it too late to ask for the division to be noted in regards to the budget motion?
We'll just check the governance rules. I think it may be, but if you could just bear with us for
Yep.
a moment.
Sorry, I should have mentioned it earlier. I do apologise.
Given that I wasn't taken in a secret vote anyway, it's... So you're calling for a division, Councillor Buckley?
Correct, yes, for the budget.
Through you, Mayor, the motion's already been passed.
Yeah, I would have thought so. Yep.
So you cannot,
Worth asking.
I can't, yeah, okay, thank you.
Nope.
Noted.
No worries. Sorry. Jamie, good evening. Council Plan, 21-25, Year 2. Mr Cannizzaro.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report which is seeking to adopt the Council Plan 21-25 for Year 2. Key points of the report for Council to consider are: the Council Plan is a key strategic document for Council as it outlines the strategic agenda for the Council during its term, which includes providing steps it will take to implement the community vision, and reports performance against strategies and strategic indicators through the quarterly and annual reporting process. We're coming towards the end of Year 1, councillors, of the Council Plan, where the highlights, achievements and challenges will be documented in the forthcoming annual report 21-22. The Council Plan has been instrumental in the development of the environmental sustainability strategy, the economic development strategy and the municipal public health and wellbeing plan. With these strategic documents appropriately referencing and linking across each other, Council will create a cohesive, integrated strategic framework for delivering outcomes for the community. The Council Plan also has had some recommended minor content changes, which includes minor amendments to wording to improve readability, updated messages from the Mayor and councillors, update to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor titles on the councillor detail page, and recommended updates to the strategic indicators for 22-23. The changes to the indicators will align the Council Plan to the Annual Action Plan 22-23 for reporting on performance throughout the year. Reporting on the Council Plan will continue in financial year 22-23 with quarterly progress reports and obviously the annual plan, the annual report, to be presented to Council and made available on our website. Tonight with me, councillors, is Jamie Lynch, Corporate Planning and Performance Officer, who's available to answer any of your technical questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Van Diggle.
Hi everyone. I have a question in regards to page 235. And it's just
235, let's navigate our way there.
And it's just in relation to the related strategic documents. I'm just noticing that like a lot of them are out of date. And I'm just curious, probably, especially about the youth plan. Is there any intention to update any of these? I know the Reconciliation Action Plan is to be actioned soon, but the Disability Access and Social Inclusion Plan's out of date. The RAP is out of date. Yeah, the youth plan is out of date. So I'm just curious, Jamie, is there any intention to update any of these anytime soon?
Yeah, I think I'll take that question.
Yeah, it's, thanks.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Our documents are reviewed and updated on a regular basis. These will be scheduled, as are some of our other policies, to be updated and reviewed and presented for Council to endorse.
It's a good pick-up, Councillor Van Diggle, and I note that the Disability Advisory Committee has only recently been reappointed, and I dare say, Mr Cannizzaro, they'll have input into that plan, for example?
Correct.
Yep, good pick-up, Councillor Van Diggle, thank you. Are there any other questions, councillors? Councillor Crook.
Thank you. I note on page 243, Strategic Action 3.1, the percentage of council electricity used from renewable sources, my understanding was that we were sourcing 100% renewable electricity, and yet we only have a 95% target. I understand we do use gas, for example, to heat the pool, but I wouldn't have thought that counted towards our electricity use. Could I have a bit of explanation around that, please?
Ask Jamie to respond to that.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Crook. My understanding is that there is still a proportion of our energy use that is gas, but as you referenced, that the indicator refers to electricity. So I need to take that question on notice because, as you alluded to, the gas is used to heat the Lake Sackledome pool. So I need to take that question on notice.
Councillor Crook, I wonder if Ms Weigel can shed some electric light on that.
Good morning, good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
Yes, we do have a range of small supplies that we're transitioning over time onto our renewable energy account. So it is taking us a little while. So we're actually, as we get to the end of each of those agreements, we're transitioning. So it's just a number of those that are still being transitioned. So the aim is still to be using 100% renewable energy, just not in this financial year, as we still transition some of those across. For example, we've just transitioned the Malakuta Airport across onto that agreement. So there's a few more like that to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good question. Thanks for the explanation. Appreciate it. Are there any other questions, councillors? Councillor Crook.
Again, at this time at 3.3, total investment in council managed land to support natural areas. We've got a target there of upwards of $1.71 million over the baseline 2021. Am I reading that correctly? We're looking to increase the budget to natural areas by 1.7 million.
Be greater than or equal to? Is that what that is?
Greater than or equal to?
Yes, through you, Mayor. So thank you for the question, Councillor Crook. That is the intention of the indicator, to improve our total investment in council managed land, and that was our baseline indicator for the financial year 2021.
Okay, thank you. So is that total council managed land, or is that to support natural areas? So does it include roadsides, for example, or are we talking about areas of native vegetation specifically, which is what I would have thought natural areas were? Or are we talking about parks? Or is it all of the above?
If I may, Mayor, I can see Fiona Weigel nodding. If I may defer to her for a response. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr Cannizzaro, and through you, Mayor. Yes, it does include the management of our roadsides. It includes the management of our natural areas, our roadsides, and some of our parks, but not our normal maintenance of parks. It's our maintenance of parks where they are in a natural state still. So it includes all of those things. So it's a contribution of them all. There is a breakup of that we can provide to you if you would like. Thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Fiona, for being here. Appreciate it. Councillors, any other questions? I see none. There is a recommendation, councillors. Do I have a motion? Councillor Crook, thank you. Councillor Allen, Councillor Crook. Would you like to speak to the matter?
Certainly. Look, I will do, but briefly. This is obviously a really important strategic document that details how we will deliver on the community plan, which is essentially a reflection of the community's aspirations over the coming year. So I really have no hesitation in endorsing the plan. As it sounds, there are some really critical elements that are really important to various sectors of our community. For example, the rural land use strategy we'll hope to complete over the next 12 months. The housing and settlement strategy, which will hopefully provide some impetus in how we'll address homelessness. The Eagle Point Structure Plan, the Paynesville Structure Plan, the East Gippsland Sporting Facilities Plan, and an open space strategy, among various others. So I have no hesitation in commending the recommendation.
Councillor Crook, thank you. Councillor Allen?
No. Thanks, Mayor. No, nothing to add.
Thank you. Is the motion opposed, councillors? Anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillors, I'd just like to note my opening words in there say that a plan without a goal is just a wish. Nice words. Well, I think it's actually a really good plan. It really is. And not only is it a good plan, it's an accessible plan. And Jamie and your team, I've said this before, that the actual layout and accessibility of this plan is a real credit to you and the other officers who've been involved, because it really does make it alive, something that could be quite dull, accessible and alive, and you really do want to get into it. So congratulations. Councillors, on that note, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thanks, that's carried unanimously. We're going to go to 5.1.4 and endorse the annual action plan now.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report seeking to endorse the annual action plan for 22-23. The key points for Council to consider tonight are the annual action plan 22-23 is a companion document to the Council plan and details the activities Councils will deliver towards achieving the strategic objectives during the financial year 22-23. The plan outlines the actions, major initiatives and strategic indicators. In addition to the actions outlined in this plan, the organisation also delivers many other services and programs, although due to the ongoing nature of these activities and sort of business as usual type activities, they're not detailed in this plan. As detailed in the plan for 22-23, there are 9 major initiatives which represent high priority activities that will require substantial time and resources to deliver. These are viewed as highly important to achieving the strategic objectives in the Council plan. These 9 initiatives are listed in the Council report, councillors. The progress of the annual action plan will be reported to Council and be available to the community on a quarterly basis and also at the end of the financial year in our annual report. Again, tonight with me is Jamie Lynch, Corporate Planning and Performance Officer, who's available to respond to any of your questions.
Great, thank you, Mr Cannizzaro. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Buckley.
Thank you. And yes, Jamie, I concur. You do fabulous work and we do appreciate it. Perhaps just to inform community a little bit better, would you be able to just briefly explain one of the actions is a reconciliation plan. Firstly, is this the first time that we've undertaken this sort of work as part of the council remit, and also what does it kind of look like?
Thank you, Councillor Buckley, and through you, Mayor. So it's not the first reconciliation action plan that Council has developed. Council has one, as was highlighted by Councillor Van Nickel earlier. The current plan is out of date, and so it's incumbent on us to review that plan and set out then a new set of things that Council will seek to do that really are about establishing or consolidating the relationship we have with the Aboriginal community of East Gippsland. And so that's quite an important piece of work, and we're really looking forward to getting underway with that piece of work over the next 12-month period.
So there'll be a new development of what that looks like, and then that will go out to the community for so that we're being transparent about that. Is that how that works?
Thank you, Councillor Buckley, and through you, Mayor. Yep. Certainly there'll be a transparent process about the development of the plan. Importantly, the development of the plan starts with a conversation with the Aboriginal community, and then works forward from that point.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Buckley. Just a procedural matter, Councillor Van Diggle, you can feel free to leave if you're feeling unwell, so that's fine. We can't all be here if we're not well, that's fine.
And Special K, if I could add, you should leave.
I feel a bit guilty if I do. but also contributing that I acknowledge I'm not contributing a lot.
The council will still be core it, so we can still make decisions, so that's fine.
In that case, I might leave because I have quite a high temperature, and I'm really not feeling well.
No worries. Yes, your screen's gone from blue to pink in the background. It must be hot.
Okay, thanks.
Good on you. Good evening. Thank you.
Sorry, bye.
Councillor Buckley, thanks for your question. Councillors, are there any other questions? In which case, councillors, there is a recommendation. Do I have a motion? Councillor Greason, seconded Councillor Crook. Councillor Greason, do you want to speak to the motion?
Not really, just to confirm again just how well set out this is and what an excellent document it is. And as you said, Mr Cannizzaro, it hangs off the council plan. Yep. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crook.
Just to reiterate those comments and to add that it's fantastic to have strategic goals. This is the plan about how we achieve them.
Yep, spot on. Thank you. Is the motion opposed, councillors? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In which case, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. That's carried unanimously. Let's move on to the Audit and Risk Committee annual work program. Let's keep that Audit and Risk Committee busy with this program. Mr Cannizzaro.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report to endorse the Audit and Risk Committee's work program for 2022 and endorse the annual internal audit program for 22 and 3. Key points for consideration tonight, Council, is the draft Audit and Risk Committee work program 2022 was endorsed by the Audit and Risk Committee at their 2nd of May 2022 committee meeting in accordance with Section 53, subsection 3 of the Local Government Act 2020, which requires the Audit and Risk Committee to adopt an annual work program. Hence, it's here tonight. The work program provides the timeline for presentation of reports, the committee's consideration, and to address the requirements of the committee outlined in its charter. The internal audit plan for 22-23 was also endorsed by the committee at their 2nd of May 2022 meeting and is presented tonight for your consideration and adoption. Also present tonight is Manager Governance Ree Kent, who's available to respond to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. And are there any questions, councillors? I see none. In which case there is a recommendation, councillors. Councillor Allen, is there a seconder? Councillor Crook. Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to the matter?
Just to say that the Audit and Risk Committee is a very important safeguard for the council and the councillors, and it's a pretty full spreadsheet there of schedule over time. And all I can say is that I really appreciate the big screens that we were provided with 12 months ago, because the writing is terribly small.
Seems to get smaller too. Thank you, Councillor Crook.
Just to say that this is a very important committee of council. It ultimately oversees the business of council. It's a third eye, if you like, to make sure that we are doing everything in a student and proper manner. So it's important, and I welcome it.
Thank you. Is the motion opposed, councillors? Doesn't look like it. Councillor Buckley. Yeah, sure. You're on mute, but I could actually lip read that you had a question.
Okay, yeah. This is in no way reflective of the Audit and Risk Charter. This is predominantly, I just wanted to make sure I hadn't missed an attachment.
Correct.
That was all.
So the terms of reference, for example, no, this is just the work plan for the Audit and Risk Committee. It's basically what they're going to look at over the next 12 months.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yep. And any councillor is very welcome to come along to those meetings and make sure that they are looking over those exact points. Councillors, is the motion opposed? I see none. Anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thanks, councillors. Carried unanimously, CEO. Let's go to the instrument of delegation, which is 5.1.6. Councillors.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report titled The Instrument of Delegation, Council to Members of Staff. The key points tonight for your consideration, councillors, is that the delegation of powers and functions is an important governance tool that facilitates day-to-day operational decisions being made promptly and efficiently. Most statutory bodies have a power of delegation, and local government councils are no exception. It's necessary to remake the instrument on a regular basis to capture any legislative changes and that we're current. Key changes to the instrument as documented in the report, there's been some changes with respect to the Cemeteries and Crematoria Act, the Food Act, the Planning Environment Act 1987, the Residential Tenancies Act and Road Management Act 2004. Tonight with me is Ree Kent, Manager Governance, who's available also, councillors, to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Mr Cannizzaro. And a weighty document here, councillors, with those delegations. Are there any questions? Thanks, I see none, in which case there is a recommendation. Is there a motion? Councillor Allen. We need a seconder. Councillor Greason. Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I think it's fairly procedural, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Ree could, if she likes, go through line by line and explain what each one is.
I'm sure that would be riveting for everyone, but I'll spare you that this evening.
It'll be released as a podcast and you can listen to it. Councillor Greason, did you wish to speak to the motion? Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? I see not, in which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thanks. Instrument of delegation is passed unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Mr Cannizzaro, your work is done for the moment. Ms Weigel, we're moving to your remit. And the first of those is the adoption of the draft East Gippsland Shire Council Asset Plan. Morgana, we're going to hear from you. Terrific.
And thank you, through you, Mayor. Councillors, before you this evening, two reports titled Adoption of the Draft East Gippsland Shire Council Asset Plan 22-32-32, the Asset Management Strategy 22-25, which is seeking council adoption of the asset plan as provided in Attachment 1 and noting of the Asset Management Strategy as provided in Attachment 2. Salient points, in particular to this report: Council is custodian of more than $1.2 billion in infrastructure assets that assist to deliver a wide range of services to community, including safety, amenity and wellbeing. The draft asset plan, as well known, communicates the way Council manages the community assets and provides a strategic and financial view with a 10-year outlook. The asset plan is also importantly, the final step in implementing the Local Government Act 2020 requirements, which requires the development of a suite of documents to support the asset management process. These include, notwithstanding, Asset Management Policy, Asset Management Strategy 22-25, again provided in Attachment 2, and 6 detailed asset management plans for key asset classes, including bridges and major culverts, open spaces, drainage, waste, buildings, roads, including footpaths. The asset plan is identified as one of Council's strategic guiding documents and informs the annual budget, long-term financial plans and a range of local plans and strategies, and has been developed with consideration of other Council adopted plans, including Community Vision 2040, Council Plan 21-25, the Long-Term Financial Plan and the Asset Management Policy. Also present tonight is our Coordinator Asset Management, David Menzel, who will be able to answer any technical questions that you might have.
G'day, David. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Crook, thank you.
I'm really glad to see the natural environment being recognised as an asset in this document. I wonder if we could just get a brief outline of how Council recognises the environment as an asset under this plan.
Defer to David on that one, Morgana.
Thank you. I will defer to David on this one. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor. We have a section 4 is an area on climate change, which deals with this environment area. It deals also in areas relating to biodiversity as well, and strategies that are in line with the environmental strategy that's being developed at the moment to help to achieve these goals. There was a lot of input from this team to get that section into this plan, and they've incorporated that throughout the whole 6 detailed management plans as well.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Crook. Councillors, any other questions? I see none. Thank you, councillors, in which case, again, we have a recommendation in front of us. Councillors. Councillor Greason, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Crook. Councillor Greason. Would you like to speak to the matter?
No, not really. Thank you. I think there's a huge amount of really good information in here, and I think it's a great plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crook, did you wish to speak to the motion? Is the motion opposed, councillors? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried, CEO. Thank you. Councillors, we're moving on to item 5.2.2, which is the draft East Gippsland Shire Environment Sustainability Strategy 32.
Mayor, I will present this one if you're okay with that.
Very much so. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mayor and councillors, it gives me great pleasure to present to you this evening for your consideration the draft Environmental Sustainability Strategy for 2022 to 2032. So it's one of our high-level, far-reaching strategies. It's one of our 3 main outwardly facing strategies, along with the Municipal Health and Wellbeing Plan and the Economic Development Strategy, both of which are being finalised now. So this strategy has been through a very onerous and development phase. It started with the development of a discussion paper, and it was then went through a range of consultation, and then we developed the strategy from that, and then took that out for consultation again. So it is one that's had a lot of community input into, and we believe reflects the desires of our community. If we go all the way back to the council plan, we'll know that when we consulted with the community on that, the environment was identified as being one of the highest priorities of our community during the preparation of that plan. And we believe what we have here reflects those aspirations of our community. The plan, because of its 10-year nature, is very high level, and therefore will be complemented by 4-year action plans, which will be much the same format as you've just seen. The council plan and the annual action plan for the council plan will be much more detailed, and that's where we'll have very detailed targets and actions. I have with me this evening Wayne Burton, who is here to answer any technical questions that you may have, or I can answer them if he's up. Here he is. So Wayne Burton and I are both available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona and Wayne. Good evening. Councillors, are there any questions? One of our key strategic documents that sits there, absolutely critical. No questions, councillors? In which case, councillors, I will ask if anybody would like to move this, because we have a recommendation. Councillor Crook, seconded Councillor Greason. Councillor Crook, would you like to speak to the motion?
Certainly. As has been mentioned, this is one of our 3 key strategic documents that sit directly under the council plan. Look, the strategy's been written to address those environmental and sustainability challenges most prevalent across the municipality. It also really demonstrates alignment with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Fundamentally, the strategy is built around achieving 7 central goals: conservation of the natural environment and biodiversity, sustainable management of natural resources, community participation in the climate response, respect and alignment with the rights of traditional owner groups, environmental sustainability that supports sustainable economic growth and new job opportunities, growth in the circular economy, and community resilience to respond to increasing climate risks and natural disasters. Councillors, this is a really important piece of work. It's an excellent document, and I'm really happy to recommend that it is moved this evening.
Thanks, Councillor Crook. Councillor Greason, do you want to speak to the matter?
Briefly, just to say that we've worked hard on this document, and I'm also very, very pleased to see it come out like this.
Thank you. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Thanks, councillors, in which case I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. CEO, that's carried unanimously. Councillors, we're moving into some contracts now, 5.2.3. So this one is the provision of waste and recycling trailer services.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor.
Good on you.
Councillors, before you is a report.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you is a report regarding the provision of waste and recycling trailer services, seeking Council's approval to exercise its option within the existing contract for waste and recycling trailer services and extend the services for an additional period of 2 years to 30 June 2024, as outlined in the attachments of the report. Salient points of this report: the procurement has been undertaken in accordance to the East Gippsland Shire Council policy. The contract is subject to the rise and fall of CPI should the contract period be extended. The current contractor has met Council's expectations through the previous contract terms in delivering these services. And with me tonight is Wayne Bath, Manager, Sustainability and Waste Minimisation, who's online to answer any technical questions you might have.
Great, thank you. And we can see you there, Wayne. Thanks for being here this evening. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Morgana, and maybe it's a question for you. I'm not sure. How are these services keeping up with demand? I know I often drive past the rubbish trailers in places like Combine Bar and Club Terrace. They seem to be working. I've had some feedback that people are generally happy with them, but is that the understanding here, that the service is working as it is?
Thank you, Councillor Crook. If you don't mind, I'll pass that question on to Wayne Bath.
Through you, Mayor, and
sure.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Crook. They seem to be working very well. We have, at times in busy times with some of our trailers, in particularly the holiday areas, we've had to have extra pickups, and that's why there's the contractors are just contacted. We get a lot around the parks areas, particularly during holiday times, but otherwise it all works very well.
Yep, thanks. Good question. And Wayne, we did go through a couple of years ago quite a bit of bloodletting in trying to work out what was the best solution to these remote places, and I'm glad to hear that they are working.
That's right.
Yep, thank you. Councillors, are there any other questions? Councillor Crook.
Does it just pertain to waste, or is it a recycling service as well?
Both. So they're a split trailer, so half the trailer's waste, half the trailer's recycled.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Good question, clarification. Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? There is a recommendation. Happy to move it. Councillor Crook, seconded Councillor Stowe. Councillor Crook, you need to speak to the motion.
Briefly, just to say, look, in such a huge geographic area, servicing waste provisions to our more remote communities is always going to be challenging, and we've obviously come up with a workable solution, albeit for the next 2 years. But waste is a challenging space generally, and one that I think we are doing an increasingly good job at. So happy to move it.
Thank you. Councillor Stowe?
Yeah, waste is a big black hole that we dump money into, but we seem to have come up with a good solution here, so well done, Wayne.
Yep, thank you. Is the motion opposed, councillors? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? No, in which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Carried unanimously, CEO. Item 5.2.4, another contract, landfill environmental monitoring services.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Councillors, before you tonight is a report for landfill environmental monitoring services, which is seeking council's approval to exercise its option within the existing contract for landfill environmental monitoring services to extend for an additional 2-year period to the 3rd of July 2024. Salient points in the report are that council is required under the Environmental Protection Act 2018 to conduct environmental monitoring services at its active and non-active registered landfill sites. The current contract outsources these specialist monitoring tasks and ensures that council meets its statutory requirements. Procurement, I will say that procurement has been undertaken in accordance with the East Gippsland Shire Council policy. The contract is subject to CPI rise and fall through the contract period, should it be extended, and the current contractor has met council's expectations through the previous contract terms in delivering these important services. Also present tonight, again, Wayne Bath, Manager of Sustainability and Waste Minimisation, to speak to any detailed
Good on you. Thank you, Morgana. Councillors, are there any questions? None that I can see. Thank you, councillors. There's a recommendation. Do I have a motion? Thanks, Councillor Crook. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Allen. Councillor Crook, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to say that these are statutory requirements from the EPA and the state government. We don't really have any option not to engage the services of a suitably qualified technician. We don't have that capacity in-house, so it needs to go out to contract. So I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Nothing to add, thanks, Mark.
Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Stowe, noting it's a black hole that goes on for a long time as well. And we have to look after it and monitor it for a long time as well. It's unreal. Thank you. Councillors, in that case, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thanks, councillors. Carried unanimously, CEO. We're getting there, councillors. Item 5.2.5 is another contract, Omeo Rec Reserve Netball and Tennis Court upgrade. This is a nice one. Morgana.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Councillors, before you tonight is a report titled Omeo Recreation Reserve Netball and Tennis Court Upgrade. The report is seeking council's consideration for the award of a design and construct package of works associated with the Omeo Recreation Reserve, the netball and tennis courts. Salient points of the report: procurement has been undertaken in compliance with the East Gippsland Shire Council policy. Really important for the community, the netball courts have previously been assessed as being in a very poor condition. Netball Victoria granted an exemption for games to be able to proceed in 2021. However, future exemptions are not necessarily guaranteed, and if the courts are not upgraded, future games may well be in jeopardy. Without compliant netball courts, Omeo will not be able to host home netball games, which will have a negative impact on the local social fabric of the Omeo community. Upgrading the courts includes a provision for one court to be used additionally for tennis as a high priority noted by the community and the Omeo Recreational Reserve Committee of Management. Funding, I may say, is via the Black Summer Bushfire Recovery Fund, and tonight with me is Sairam Jagthiaswaran, who is the Manager of Capital Works and Plant, who can speak to the technical detail of this particular report.
Thank you, Morgana, and good evening, Sairam. Thank you for being here tonight. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Buckley, how are you on goal attack?
I was wing attack, but equally as dangerous, yes. So look, my question is, it's around also just mentioning that there's been some works done at the recreation reserve, but there was a car park. Originally, some of the problems that we were having with the netball court was because of drainage issues, correct? And I just wanted assurances that that had all been remedied and dealt with now prior to this next part of the journey.
Good question. I recall those matters as well.
Thank you. I might pass this one over to Si, and if we're actually unable to confirm at this point in time, I'll come back to council. I also have Fiona
and
online.
Fiona, this might be something you recall as well, Fiona.
So I'm happy to step in, acknowledging that Si's fairly new in his role. So yes, the drainage has been addressed and the sealing of the car park. It does, so that's addressed some of the problems, Councillor Buckley. There are other problems that now still need to be resolved. But when we go in now and upgrade the netball courts, we know that they won't be undermined by poor drainage. So the car park was recently sealed and the drainage was upgraded at the same time. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Good question. Thank you. Councillors, any other questions? In which case, councillors, there is a recommendation, and within the confidential items of your attachments has the details on the contractor and the sum, and I'm sure that we will see that once the motion has been moved. So, councillors, is there a motion? Councillor Buckley, good on you, thank you. It's opposed by Swifts Creek because you don't want to be too good, no. It's seconded by Councillor Allen, thank you. Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to the motion?
I certainly would. I think that this is a really good investment in the Omeo community. In remote areas in the East Gippsland Shire, it's quite often we struggle to get the necessary infrastructure and money this far out. So it's really nice to see that happen, and I hope that perhaps the Benamba Recreation Reserve will be next on the list. It certainly needs some input. So I support this. I think it's very well put together, and I thank the officers for putting all the effort into it, and I look forward to seeing the capital works start taking place. We certainly put a lot of input in regards to councillors and meeting with the community in regards to this issue, and it will nicely support the upgrade of the playground, which is right near the netball courts. And I know that every person in the community up here really engages in that community hub. It brings everybody together. It's our social fabric. And we really appreciate that we can we can make this upgrade. But furthermore, we should concentrate on ensuring that our services to the Omeo community are always first and foremost. So that'll be the next big hurdle. So thank you, councillors.
Thanks, Sonia. Councillor Allen.
Thanks, Mark. Look, as mentioned at the briefings last week, Sonia and I attended the Omeo Rec Reserve in January 12 months ago, and this was on their wish list, and to see it delivered and the car park fixed is fantastic. And I did hear a figure today, and I can't remember whether it's $10 or $11 million that $10 million that this makes that have been put into the sporting infrastructure of the Omeo community in the last 3 weeks.
9.7 in mountain bikes and 700 here.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Allen. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Stowe.
Yeah, I'd like to endorse those remarks. That it is pleasing to see the significant amount of maintenance being spent, not in places like Bairnsdale, we also have some significant amounts, but in the outlying areas, and the people up there will benefit from these assets for decades to come. So it's money well spent, in my opinion.
Terrific. Good points well made. Thanks, councillors. Anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In which case we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Terrific. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We're just about there. Some provision of line painting services on our long and winding roads. Thank you. Sorry, before we move on, there is the final motion, Cranes asphalting and the sum. Great. Terrific. Wonderful. 5.2.6, Councillors, Contract 2022-1470, Provision of Line Painting Services. Is that you, Morgana, still?
Thank you. Yes, that is me.
Yep.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So, councillors, again, another report before you for the provision of line marking services, which is seeking council approval to enter into a contract for line marking services for as per the schedule of rates and provided in the confidential attachment item number 1. Salient points for the report for council to consider are that council is responsible for 1,157 kilometres of sealed road and is required to undertake renewal, replacement, upgrades on a regular basis as part of the road reseal. General road and car park maintenance and line marking forms a critical aspect of road safety. Procurement has been undertaken in accordance to the Gippsland Shire Council policy, and this contract replaces the existing contract for the provision of line marking services, which expires on the 30 June 2020.
Very good. Thank you, Morgana. Councillors, are there any questions? CEO.
If I may,
yes.
just to acknowledge that we may have just got those two confused. We are talking about painting services, not the line marking services at this point in time.
Correction, thank you. So this is contract 1470, provision of painting services.
Correct.
Painting services. Sorry, Morgana, I led you astray. So we do have 1,500 kilometres of roads and we're not going to paint them all. So let's make a correction here. Thank you for that. We've only been going for 2 hours.
So we may not need to go back, given that it's been introduced. It's probably a minor change to the agenda. You could move a motion just to flip those over, but...
and I'd be delighted to move such a motion.
Rightio, okay. So we're happy that Morgana has introduced contract 1471 at item 5.2.7, and that's what we're deciding on now, councillors. Okay. So first we need a motion to flip those items, do we?
Yeah.
Okay, so we need a motion to change what? Thank you. Change the items. We need a seconder, please. Councillor Greason. Is the motion opposed? Do you want to speak to it? No. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of flipping those items. That was my mistake. Okay. Thank you for retrieving that. We are now voting on the provision of line marking services, which is contract 1471, moved by Councillor Stowe, seconded by Councillor Greason. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Fully support the motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Greason. Is the motion opposed, councillors? It's not, in which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Morgana, let's go back to item 1470. Now you can provide the painting services. So do we need to see the contract?
Just before you do, yes, we've just
and here it is
on the screen there for a moment. And that's what has been resolved on.
We have resolved that. Thank you. Great. Councillors, back to 1470. Something happened in 1470. Did Columbus sail away or something then? I'm sure it was. Morgana, sorry, keep me back on track. I'm starting to stray.
Through you, Mayor, last one for me. So, councillors, before you is a report for the provision of painting services.
Painting services.
Which is seeking council approval to enter into a contract with each recommended member of the panel of providers for each area as outlined in confidential attachment 1 for the provision of painting services for a 3-year term. Procurement has been undertaken in accordance to the Gippsland Shire Council policy. This contract is for a panel of contractors to provide on request general provision of painting services, Part A, emergency response services, Part B, general scheduled services and plaster works. This contract will replace the existing contract 2018, which expires on the 8th of July 2022. The initial term of the contract is for 3 years at fixed rates, effective 9 July 2022 to 8 July 2025. Also present is Sai Jagdiswaran, Manager of Capital Works and Plant, who will be able to answer any technical questions you may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And once again, the confidential item attachment contains the details on this matter. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Greason.
Thanks, Morgana. Can I ask you again, why would these services be required for emergency responses?
Thank you, Councillor Greason. I'm comfortable to answer that one if you don't mind. In relation to a number of the facilities that we are responsible for, emergency services would constitute a response, perhaps where there is damage to a building and the Committee of Management might not be able to use it, or it might not be available for community use, water damage, various other building issues that might come to pass, which may mean that the community or a community member might not have access to that building.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Good.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any other questions? Thanks, councillors. Then there is a recommendation. Is there a motion, councillors? Councillor Crook, seconded Councillor Greason. Councillor Crook, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Greason, would you like to? Is the motion opposed, councillors? Doesn't look like it. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In which case I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Carried unanimously. And thank you, Morgana. I think your work is done here now. Mr McConnell, I think we move into your remit. The next item, councillors, is in item 5.3.1, request for in-principle support of the ending of the Section 173 agreement.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report seeking your endorsement to give in-principle support by Council towards the ending of a legal agreement that's applicable to 52 Country Club Drive, Lakes Entrance. The recommendation is made giving consideration to the Lakes Entrance Northern Growth Area Outline Development Plan and the development plan that was approved for this subject land. As I step into this, it's probably just worth reminding councillors that the removal of a Section 173 agreement is a two-step process. Firstly, is council in principle supportive of the matter being considered? There's then a period of notice and opportunity for people to make comment, and then it's brought back for councillors to make a final decision. So we're at the first stage tonight. Other points I just would like to make is the agreement relates to an area of native vegetation on the land that was required to be retained to fulfil the native vegetation regulatory requirements of a previous subdivision, which was created in Country Club Drive and Riviera Court in the early 2000s. Subsequently, from about 2013, as part of the development of the Lenga plans, so the Lakes Entrance Northern Growth Area plans, this area of vegetation was not included in those updated plans, particularly the Native Vegetation Precinct Plan. And instead, there was a range of other areas set aside for native vegetation offsets, which was more consistent with the current practice for vegetation protection at the time. And it's important to note also that the Lenga plans that have been approved by Council were subject to extensive consultation at that time. Today's item is consistent with that development plan that's applicable to this land. The native vegetation is to be removed subject to the granting of a planning permit and meeting the obligations required by the permit. So that planning permit is the instrument that will give effect to the requirement for offsetting requirements. Both the outline development plan for Lenga and the specific development plan approved for the site identify this area of vegetation as being removed and being subject to dwelling development. And as such, it's appropriate for Council to give in principle support for the ending of the agreement. and notice of the proposal is required to all parties bound by or benefiting from the agreement, which is all of the properties within the subdivision. And so once that notification is complete, as mentioned earlier, and we have that, any comments provided, we'll bring the matter back for Council for final consideration. And Robert Pringle is also online this evening to assist with any matters of detail. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Stuart. Councillors, these are matters that should become more and more familiar to Section 173s. Are there any questions on this one? Tom.
If I could just please have it explained to me how, in removing this, we'd be meeting our obligations under the retention of native vegetation, which my understanding is that an offset is much lower down the priority list. And if there are opportunities to retain the vegetation, that they need to be explored to the greatest extent before offsets are considered. I haven't seen any evidence in the documents before us that show alternative plans or layouts for the subdivision that would demonstrate that those matters have been duly considered. It would appear that the developer is merely going for an easier option in an offset. So I guess to reiterate my question, please explain to me how the process has been followed here to ensure that every opportunity has been afforded to retain the native vegetation.
Yeah. So again, those matters were considered in some detail at the time of the development of the Lenga plan and the native veg precinct plan that was developed as part of that. So that's the point at which we went through. The Council considered those matters, and in resolving on that outline development plan, effectively gave agreement to that approach, which is involves allowing this area to be cleared and provision of separate offsets. There are constraints in general right through the Lenga area in terms of the land that can be developed. Some parts of it are quite steep and difficult to develop, and other parts have other constraints in terms of drainage easements and other things. So those matters were considered at that time that the Lenga plans were developed. Robert, is there anything further you'd want to add to that?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Councillor Crook, I'll just suggest that we agree that in the current framework, it's the lower priority, but the concept for this development was established and the development plan was prepared somewhat earlier than the current requirements. So we're following on from the previous statutory approvals that have been granted.
Okay, so because the plan was developed previously, we're not going to apply the current rules. Am I understanding that correctly? That doesn't seem quite right.
Through you, Mayor,
Yep.
the development plan was established at a point in time that the same provisions would not apply, and the progression is once a development plan is obtained, then we carry forward to a planning permit for subdivision. So it's the progression through the statutory process, and it would be difficult, but not impossible, for council now to say to the developer, we want you to come back to the drawing board and redo the development plan. We're not saying it's an impossibility, but we would have to be very careful about that negotiation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Councillor Greason, thanks. Thanks, Tom.
Robert, thank you for that. It still doesn't make a lot of sense to me that we might have approved a plan donkeys years ago, but applying the section 173 was only 15 years ago. And I would have thought that a section 173, which is designed to protect that 0.6 hectares in perpetuity, would negate the original plan to some extent and require it to be reviewed. So, I mean, that's my perception of it, and so I'm not understanding your statement that it kind of doesn't apply. It was done, it was agreed by the council and the owner of the property, and now the developers are wanting to... And that's another question, are the developers the owners of the property? And so that's just for clarification.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the question. Are you saying Section 173 does not apply or should not apply because it was created after council approved a development earlier?
So, Councillor Grecian, I might just
Yep,
clarify the order in which things occurred. So, there was an original subdivision layout, etc., and identification of this area for protection in the early 2000s, and that's when the 173 agreement was established. Then through the mid-teens, so 10 years later, roughly, the Lenga plans, the outline development plan, etc., was developed with an alternate way to address the important issues of protection of native vegetation and offsetting vegetation that was to be cleared. And it's in effect this decision in relation to the 173 agreement is giving effect to those decisions by council around that time of 2018 or thereabouts. And we just need to be mindful also in that. So if that was a decision of council to approve a development plan, and as Robert outlined, to then come back and say, actually, we want to renegotiate that development plan is a significant thing in itself.
So we approved the development plan after the Section 173 was put in place?
That's correct, with an alternate plan for native vegetation.
Okay, so I'm assuming from that the original agreement is now considered to have been a problem and that people wish it hadn't happened. I mean, yeah, thank you, that's enough. Mm.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jane. Councillor Allen.
Thanks, Mark. Stuart, so or Robert, whoever, just to get this straight in my mind, this proposal here is just to allow them to go to the next stage, which is to seek consultation with the neighbours to put it out there, and then we will get another chance at this before it is removed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So this is in principle, in principle decision, which allows the proposal then to go on notice.
Yeah.
And then once people have had the opportunity to respond to that, it's brought back for decision by council. And all of this is about the developers then acting on the plan that council's approved.
So this doesn't bind us in any way when it comes back to us in the future. That's when we'll make a decision. Is that correct?
Correct. So I'll ask Robert to confirm that, but in essence, it's a decision to proceed to the notice stage. There is, of course, some indication with the view being that this is in principle support, but it is not the final and binding decision. Just ask for that. Robert, you can confirm that?
That's correct.
Yep.
Good.
Thank you, councillors. Are there any other questions? Okay, then councillors, there is a recommendation. Do we have a motion? Yeah. Councillor Stowe, Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Stowe?
No, thank you. I think we've said enough about it.
Okay, Councillor Allen.
Only to say that this just allows the rest of the process to happen, and I think that's something that we've got to allow, is that process to follow through before we make our decision.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would you like to speak, Councillor Crook?
Yes, thank you. I think that the planning hierarchy around native vegetation is pretty clear, in that offsetting is to be considered as a secondary measure to other measures that would see permanent protection or opportunities for retention. And when they've been exhausted, then we consider offsetting. I don't see any evidence of that in the current plan. I understand this is they're seeking in-principle support, and until I've seen some evidence that they have duly taken into consideration the other opportunities, I'm not prepared to support it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Greason?
I won't support it either because I don't agree in principle to ending a section 173 for these reasons. And it concerns me that there is an agreement for a section 173 that we can then just change later on for convenience sake, for the sake of development, I suppose, when it's around protecting high conservation value country. So that's just a principal thing, I suppose. But the other thing is offsetting this kind of conservation valued country. It doesn't replace it. It takes years to get anywhere close to it being equivalent. I'm not an expert in this, but my observation is it's not particularly well policed. There's not a lot of oversight about how it'll happen, whether it's going to be nurtured on an ongoing basis, etc. So that's the second reason I don't support it. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion, councillors? In which case, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors, for your deliberations. Councillors, we're moving on to the carried forward item, which is the Councillors and Delegates reports. And I'm happy to move around the table to the left, which would be you, Councillor Greason, if you're ready.
26. Okay, thank you. So I've been extremely busy. I attended a Reconciliation Action Conference in Sydney, which wasn't a council-funded activity, but it was very relevant to what we're going to be doing, I think. It was a very high-level conference with keynote presentations by new ministers, CEOs of national organisations, and lots of discussion about how to do it. And I guess my take-home message is the importance of it, that it's done really well, it's complex, it requires full and meaningful commitment of an organisation. I also attended with Councillor Crook the Bairnsdale West Reconciliation Day Assembly, which was an absolutely extraordinary event, and I'd really like to go back and watch it all again. And I know that the school has kept the great big displays that the kids developed there until the end of June. I really recommend people go and have a look at them. They're very good. The stories told by the teachers, the singing, the stories by the kids about the impact of colonisation on Aboriginal people in front of the 10 large displays which they built, which represent sites along the Battleluck Trail. It was very, very special, and I think Doug Vickers, the principal, and his staff and the children should be very proud of what they've done in this reconciliation space. There are a whole lot of other things I won't talk to because I know that others will. Including the National Assembly of Local Government, General Assembly. I've been to a number of the Winter Festival events that have all been just delightful, and probably the most quirky was Paganini's 24 Caprices, played by violinist Jonathan Glonek from Bendock. And it was played in Iceworks, and it was fantastic.
That would have been very cool. Cool. Sorry.
That's for me, thank you.
Good on you. Thanks, Councillor Greason. Councillor Buckley. I'm sort of moving that way, so you're next in the circle.
Thank you very much. Well, it's been a very busy time for all councillors. We've had a huge amount of or volume of information to read. I've fielded so many phone calls and read so many emails. I've just been consumed by the role of councillor. It's a very important time of the year. I attended the Economic Development Strategy, a key stakeholder meeting, which I found really interesting, and And it certainly pointed out the high value of a sustainable and food and fibre sector for East Gippsland and being the bedrock of our economy. Certainly highlighted the importance of arts and culture and building our assets, which it was a very interesting meeting. It gave me a little bit of forward thinking. I attended also the Timber Towns meeting, which I regularly do. Before us at the present time, we have a native timber harvesting position paper, which we've been extensively developing and which has been rather controversial in our council environment. We've met and listened to both sides of the equation, and it's certainly reflective of responsible management of Australian native forests, and I'm hoping that applying scientifically based and sustainable forest management will provide healthy forests in the future, and will work diligently to ensure that we look after our economy as well as our environment. And finally, I went to and I speak of regularly, Rural Councils Victoria, which is always working very diligently and hard for rural councils. And I know it's been a long night, so I'll keep it short and move on to the next councillor. Thank you, Mayor.
Good on you. Thank you, Sonia. Tom.
Thank you, Mayor. I also had the great pleasure of attending the reconciliation event at Bairnsdale West Primary School, where the students actually recreated the Battlelook Cultural Trail in the auditorium there with dioramas and paper maches and everything you can imagine. They didn't really pull any punches in delivering a fairly fearless but honest account of the successes and challenges of their school's reconciliation journey and that of the broader community. So I'd just like to commend them on that. It was fantastic. I attended and spoke at the Regenerosity exhibition at the Iceworks Gallery in Lakes Entrance, one of the opening events of this year's Winter Festival, where we were treated to some excellent local art, a series of photographs of local characters and their climate journeys. We also learned about the Community Power Hub, who are doing some very great progressive work, bringing the benefits of renewable energy to several of our more remote communities. I also had the pleasure of opening the events networking dinner at the RSL, where we heard all about the successes of the Denny Ute muster in Deniliquin. People may laugh, but the small town of Deniliquin, which is, we're talking about 7,500 people, it's about the same size as Lakes, now attracts an international cavalcade of acts and interests, and it's not just the Bundy-fuelled yeehaw that you might imagine. Their biggest patrons are now families, and they bring in over $4 million annually for their local town. And it's an idea that was dreamt up by a couple of locals and is a locally run community event still that has far-reaching benefits. So it really speaks to the capacity for events to be a generator of economic benefit to local towns. And the industry networking night also saw the launch of 3 newly developed toolkits that we've been a big part of, along with the Latrobe Valley Authority, to advise on the collaboration between event organisers, businesses and community groups that really outline the benefits and a step-by-step process to get events started and create those continuing partnerships around events across the region. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Good on you. Thank you. Trevor?
Well, speaking of yeehaw, Tom, I was pleased to go along to the Colorado Children's Choir, Anthony.
Yeah, that was good.
Now, these kids are ranged between about 11 and 16-year-old, and they're from America, obviously, and they were fantastic. This was a seriously good affair. I hope we have something similar again. I'd be glad to go along. They went for about an hour. It was free. The Breck Centre was almost full. And if I could just let you know, you've all heard of ABBA and Slim Dusty and all these famous people, but the Colorado Youth Choir have performed before the Pope, the Dalai Lama. They've sung alongside Celine. What's her name? Celine Dion. I'm not very good at music. And someone I've never heard of called Natalie Cole. They've also appeared at the White House, I was informed. Donald Trump was very pleased. They've been to London's Royal Albert Hall, and in welcoming them I said, well, now you've been to East Gippsland, and they were delighted. Robert and Jenny Latimer are proud East... I'm reading from the council notes here because it's appropriate. Proud East Gippslanders and passionate supporters of the arts, and they've been bringing international talent to the area for 20 years, and the whole day went off just fantastic. The other thing is, just briefly, the Lakes Central Surf Lifesaving Club, in the absence of the Mayor who was unavailable to go, and the Deputy Mayor who was struck down with COVID, I went along to their presentation night. They're an impressive bunch, you all know about them, but they've got 400 members, they've got a lot of young people, which is unusual for organisations these days, and they had about 100 awards that night. The night I got there at 5:30 and left about 10 o'clock. It was a fairly lengthy night, but they've got the nippers, they've got people that have been there donating hours, some people are working like 100 hours a week for them, and they've got a new life member called Dingo. Trevor Corduroy, and his claim to fame, he's been the barman for about 20 years. Now, I didn't know you could become a life member for being the barman. I might put in for that job. But anyway, congratulations to Lakes Central Surf Lifesaving, doing a fantastic job.
Great, thank you. And the secretary has retired eventually?
Well, maybe. The AGM was the following day. She'd been there for 19 years, and they wished her well, gave her a presentation, said this is the end of it. And she said, well, yes, unless I change my mind tomorrow. And the president then went on to say, this is the end of it. There will be a new secretary tomorrow. So I'm not really sure about the politics of it all.
Right, the secretary can always fiddle the minutes, I suppose, of the meeting. That's right.
Yes. Yes.
Very good. Thanks for doing that. It's really appreciated.
Thanks, Mark. I'll just finish Trevor's report, actually. I better add that the person in question is Trevor Corduroy, who is also a Shire employer in Parks and Gardens and has been for quite a long time. Yeah, good bloke.
Yes, yeah, lovely bloke.
As Tom has already spoken about, the Better Business dinner at the RSL, and he left me one little snippet that really impressed me, was the address by Stuart Anderson from Meeting, who had a heap of notes, forgot to read them, spoke from the heart, and I thought was one of the highlights of the whole show. He was exceptional. And the very next day after that, in the company of Councillor Stowe and the Mayor, we had the pleasure of attending the Alpine School at Dinner Plain. And apart from the sausage rolls, which I can still savour, the highlight of the day was meeting one of our youth ambassadors, Adam from Orbost, who gave us a guided tour of the facility and put himself over very, very well. So it was great to see our youth ambassadors in a place like Dinner Plain where we didn't think we would. And then later that day, along with Trevor and Mark, attended the turning of the first sod for the Omeo mountain bike track, and there was a big turnout, including two former mayors in ex-councillor Rotino and O'Connell. And I think the highlight of the day for everyone was that not only did Danielle Green bring her shovel, she also brought $3.5 million to finish the second stage of the project. So that was pretty good. And on the Queen's birthday weekend, a little known fact that the Gippsland men's and women's volleyball teams went through the regional championships at Horsham undefeated, and both the men's and women's teams brought home the gold. So, Danny McQueen, nice if job. You're watching at home, I told you I'd mention it. And also, I just want to also touch on the Colorado Children's Chorale. Absolutely first class, and well done, Bob and Jenny, for bringing them. And I look forward to the men's choir, which I believe is here mid-July. If it's anywhere near as good as that, don't miss it.
Great. Terrific. Thanks, councillors, for your reports. I'm just going to draw on a couple of items and I'll submit the report for the record. many of the events I have attended that you've mentioned, so I won't double up on that. I will mention two matters though. MAV State Conference on Friday, and that was a vibrant and busy day where the MAV rules were discussed ad nauseum, it felt, for quite a while, but we got there in the end. But most importantly, councillors, our two motions got up unanimously, so that's really, really important. So nice job, everyone. And we were there ready to push them along, but they were endorsed by State Conference. And secondly, at ALGA, our two motions were also endorsed and unanimously, and prepared to speak vigorously to the crowd, but didn't require that at all. So two good outcomes through our process to get the right motions at the right time to the right place, the right people. So in particular, I think the EES process, so the CEO mentioned earlier that One Gippsland has endorsed our position, so we've raised that, and One Gippsland have endorsed to support our motion around a revised EES process, and we've also got that now through MAV State Conference. And it was seconded by Jim Child, who's the Mayor at Yarra Ranges. And as you are probably aware, Yarra Ranges are going through an EES process for their mountain bike park, except they are the proponent for the mountain bike park. So, and I also had the opportunity to speak to one of the ward councillors from Hastings, who was in the middle of that EES process that, what's the Shire down there called? Mornington Shire went through as well. So these matters are going to keep coming back to bite councils again and again. So I think that's enough for the moment. The National Conference was really outstanding, and I thank Councillor Greason and Councillor Van Diggle for coming along, CEO and the officers for the organisation to get us there, and to enable us to be able to be at that meeting and to be able to represent our Shire on the national stage, which I think we did very well, even on the dance floor, and then subsequently at where we needed to be, and that was voting for the motions. Councillors, on that note then, I will declare the meeting closed at 8:41. Did you want to speak to everybody after the meeting's closed? So just don't go anywhere. Councillor Stowe wanted to say anything, say something before you all leave. But once again, can I thank councillors for your enduring work, their tireless work and your presence in the community. Yes, thank you. I also need to make a note that there is no urgent or other business. So that was, and their confidential business has been carried over, has been dealt with through the normal process. So that's item 6 and item 7, councillors. So now that I have got my running sheet, I'll follow it. And now I will say that we'll declare the meeting closed at 8:42 and thank the officers for your excellent reports that enable us to make good decisions. I say that every time and I mean that. So thank you, officers. Thank you, councillors.